Conker's Bad Fur Day is a one-of-a-kind product of its time sort of a game. Movie references, uniquely crazy bosses, and of course, naughty animal hijinks. But Conker wasn't always the drinking and guns-a-blazing squirrel we see in Bad Fur Day. There was a time where he was just another kind-hearted anthropomorphic animal protagonist. Today, I want to take a little journey into the legacy of Conker, from Diddy Kong Racing, to Pocket Tales, to Bad Fur Day, and beyond. This is the journey of Conker when good squirrels go bad.
Oh no. It's gonna be one of those
videos. The true start of Conker's journey begins in 1996 with the start of development of Conker 64. It was intended to be a 3D platformer much like Super Mario 64, which, let's be honest, was one of the most influential games of the time, so it's no surprise Rare wanted to capitalize on the 3D platformer genre. We actually have a bit of art conceptualizing Conker's design before a proper 3D model was created. These come from Chris Seaver, the voice of Conker himself. Chris was directly involved with Conker the entirety of its development. Development of Conker 64 pushed on into 1997 for Conker's solo adventure, now renamed to Conker's Quest, and footage was first shown of development of this game that year at E3 with an established and more familiar Conker model. But the first actually released start of Conker's journey begins in a little game on the Nintendo 64 called Diddy Kong Racing. The feature of this character within Diddy Kong Racing was meant to get folks familiar with them before the release of their solo adventure, much like Banjo. The game at this point, like I mentioned, was to be titled Conker's Quest, initially planned to be released around Christmas time in 1997, but was pushed back to continue development and Rare focused on the release of Diddy Kong Racing with Conker as a feature. In Diddy Kong Racing, we can learn a little bit about Conker's personality, but in all honesty, it's not too much. We learn that Conker is an exploration nut and is an already established friend of Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong from previous adventures, as well as seemingly knowing Banjo at least a little as he joins him passing through to go help Diddy on Timber's Island. He also is bored with a squirrel's daily routine. In the character select screen in Diddy Kong Racing, each character has a specific set of instrumentation that plays to represent the personality of that character. For example, Diddy has an electric guitar, Banjo has banjo, and Conker is represented by the flute. Here is his theme track. The development of Conker's Quest was pushed into 1998, which also saw the release of the highly successful Banjo-Kazooie. The decision was made to rename Conker's Quest to 12 Tales Conker 64 early that year, and more footage of the game was shown off at E3 yet again, only this time the reception wasn't as positive. The footage shown revealed the direction of Conker as a kid-friendly 3D platformer, featuring his love interest, Birdy, trying to recover 100 stolen presents from the evil hoodlums across 4 worlds. Let's take a look at a bunch of footage of 12 Tales Conker 64 at this point. After showing a lot of this footage, people started critiquing the kid-friendly aspect of the game, saying it looked too much like many other projects at the time. Rare took that to heart and started conceptualizing ideas to separate it from the pack. But as all of these decisions were happening and development continued for the Nintendo 64 title, another game featuring the squirrel was put together and released for the Game Boy Color. Conker's Pocket Tales. Pocket Tales was meant as the precursor to the N64 entry 12 Tales. The game was released with a more family-friendly approach in 1999, so as you can imagine, 12 Tales was delayed quite a bit to rework the design considering it was initially planned for 1997. The plot revolves around Conker celebrating his birthday with his girlfriend Barry, but the party gets crashed by the evil Acorn, who kidnaps Barry and steals Conker's presents. So Conker must hunt down these presents and eventually save his girlfriend from the clutches of the evil Acorn. The game is a top-down Zelda overworld-style platformer game, which makes sense as the game originally started its life as a Zelda-style game after Rare finished Donkey Kong Land 3 in 1997, and they wanted it to have a darker theme and tone. But after seeing the early builds of Conker, the art direction took a turn to directly align with the vision for 12 Tales fantasy world, and Conker appears as a more refined and modified version of his Diddy Kong Racing look. Just a cool note that the soundtrack, much like the N64 game, was also composed by Robin Beanland. I personally find the main theme and intro sequence very impressive, especially for a Game Boy Color title. Check this out. Back to development on the N64 game. This is where everything shifted. In response to the cutesy platformer critique, the game was reworked and retooled into a raunchy, over-the-top, adult-oriented story about Conker the Squirrel having a hangover.
You remember Conker? You know, big bushy tail, cute big blue eyes, he was running through blood. He's kind of changed now.
When the game was announced in 2000 as Conker's Bad Fur Day, and after showing off some of the teasers, many thought it was a joke, only to find out the game really did shift in tone to something much more adult-oriented and darker. So Conker was no longer the family-friendly squirrel he once was. In fact, it's implied in the manual Conker disappointed his parents. Oh no. The actual gameplay from its initial concept was also changed quite a bit. It seems on the original 12 Tales build, you had the basic movement mechanics of a platformer more in line with a game like Mario 64. Conker's moveset was more complete and straightforward, while you could also play as Barry, who had a dino companion you had to care for. Elements of these ideas sort of bled into other games like a lot of Rare projects. In Bad Fur Day, Conker's gameplay is still under the category of platforming, but with the introduction of the context-sensitive buttons that sort of give you an item, ability, or sequence that lets you solve a puzzle or situation right in front of you. It's definitely a very unique mechanic and never really reproduced in any other game, to my knowledge at least. Conker's world still retains a lot of the fantasy elements still, and I might say, it looks gorgeous. And now, it's filled to the brim with movie and pop culture references throughout its story. Clockwork Orange, The Matrix, The Exorcist, just to name a few. The goal is to collect cold, hard cash, and find Barry along the way. This is actually the telling of how Conker became king of all the land. So don't forget that detail. Each level in Conker is filled to the brim with charm, and let's be honest, probably the wackiest levels in all of Rare's catalog of games. Let me highlight every chapter in the game just so you can get a taste. Chapter 1, Hungover. This functions as the tutorial level and initial premise of the game, the start of Conker's Bad Fur Day. We meet Birdy here, the scarecrow who teaches us about context sensitivity, and we also encounter a gargoyle who we smack right off his gothic architecture. This area is a pretty basic section with a small garden, waterfall, and bridge. Follow this up with Chapter 2, Windy. This is sort of like the hub area of the world. It's here we encounter the queen bee and recover her hive and deal with some wonderful poo-related business. The Windmill is at the center of the world and the various entrances to levels surround it. The music here is the best in the entire game and probably the most iconic and what the series is known for. Chapter 3, Barn Boys. Here we meet a sentient paint can and brush, a stinky mouse who wants the living cheese, the king bee, a bodacious sunflower, and a few sentient box people, and of course, our bestest friend in the world. This world has a large barn in the middle, a cheese ranch, and a few smaller areas, as well as leading to our first boss fight underneath the inside of the barn. Chapter 4, Bat's Tower. This area is essentially the swimming level of the game. We're to open the safe for the catfish to get a cut of their money. It involves us climbing a tower and swimming underneath the vault in dark underwater tunnels. as well as dealing with Mr. Cog and his female companions. We'll leave it at that. Chapter 5, Sloprano. The shortest chapter in the game, but maybe the greatest boss fight of all time. This is Poo Mountain and the epic fight against the great and mighty Poo. It doesn't get much better than this. Chris Marlowe, you have a lovely singing voice. Chapter 6, Ooga Booga. Here we encounter cavemen, ride a prehistoric raptor, release Barry from a Rockman nightclub by urinating on the Rockmen. Yep, that's true. We also rocketboard across lava while avoiding giant dinosaurs. The whole level is a vibe between the club scene, the volcanic prehistoric scene, with a gladiatorial combat arena. It's something to look at for sure. Also, inside this dinosaur head's mouth and throat. It's disgusting. Chapter 7, A Spooky. The spooky chapter is regarded as quite a few people's favorites last I asked. Zombie killing, vampire bat transformations, and exploring a huge dark and creepy mansion. This chapter has a lot of style, and Conker's ancestor is revealed to be the owner. Oh, great. Each room is filled with some unique imagery, and it even has a little garden area. How nice. Chapter 8, It's War. This chapter is not for the faint of heart, dodging lasers and gunfire while eliminating teddies. We must do what we need to do. This level is equal parts creepy and packed to the brim with incredible moments. Surviving the beachfront assault, riding a tank through the battlefield, and fighting it. Chapter 9, The Heist. The final chapter of the game starts with Matrix references. We have to rob the bank and get all the cold hard cash we can. Once we do, we shoot up into space and fight an alien. It's as insane as it sounds, and somehow, those aren't the craziest things that happen in this chapter. Poor Barry. That's a brief summary of the chapters. Each one is completely unique and offers unique gameplay elements as well. That's the thing with Conker. It's always changing. Gameplay variety is a key factor in game design to keep things feeling fresh, and if I'm being honest, the core gameplay of Conker's okay, but the variety is what makes everything in this game feel special. It's just like any idea they had, they went for, and it worked. I know I said Windy was the most recognizable and best tune, but this game has a lot of really good sound design in general. It certainly shines in that aspect as well. It may not be as memorable as the Bears soundtrack, but certainly it's a strong contender. The Great Mighty Poo song is especially special. In fact, the soundtrack is so strong that some remnants got reused for other projects, mainly the main theme for Jet Force Gemini. Yep, that started out in Conker. Let me highlight a few of my favorite tracks from the game.
When I've knocked you out with all my bab, I'm going to take your head and ram it up my butt.
Your butt.
My butt.
Your butt.
That's right, my butt.
Ugh.
My butt. My butt.
Robin Beanland, you're a legendary composer in your own right. I've sort of highlighted a bit of everything that went into Bad Fur Day, from its gameplay elements to music to levels and development along the way. Now, we could really end it there, but where's the fun in that? Conker went beyond Bad Fur Day. Why don't we start with the sequel that never came to be, Conker's Other Bad Day. Immediately following the release of Conker's Bad Fur Day, the direct sequel was being planned for the Nintendo GameCube. According to Chris Seaver, concept art and graphics were completed for the game, as well as the initial storyline, which summarized as, following Conker's unsuccessful time as king of all the land, he blew all his money on partying, women, and beer, eventually getting thrown into prison for shenanigans. Breaking out essentially would have functioned like the tutorial level. In this prison, we would have also seen Birdy locked up, and this time he's grown a beard and changed his name to Beardy. Barry and Professor Von Cripplespeck would have been shown to survive after getting sucked out into space. They were recovered by aliens in their own spacecraft. Barry is revealed to be the boss, and Cripplespeck her henchman. It's also revealed the aliens turned her into a cyborg. She's working with the Weasel to create another Teddy's army on the moon, and a secret weapon called the Death Starfish. The game would end with Barry transferring her mind into a cloned version of her body, and is dubbed the Panther Queen. Throughout the game, we would also get more backstory on Greg and his childhood and why he hates cats. The main antagonist of the game, however, would have been the Cthulhu Poo, a massive space poo. And that's as far as the game got. With the transition of Rare from Nintendo to Microsoft, this sequel got canned, and they went on to make another Conker game. This time, a remake of Bad Fur Day with a focus on online multiplayer, Conker Live and Reloaded. Conker Live and Reloaded was developed and released for Microsoft's Xbox in 2005. This is one of the first projects Rare was working on under the Microsoft umbrella. It appears that the remake was decided on rather than a sequel due to Bad Fur Day releasing at the end of the N64's life and not selling too well. They wanted to establish the platformer on a new console and build an audience before going full steam ahead with a proper sequel. They ended up remaking the entire game utilizing the power of the Xbox. Graphically, it's actually still impressive to this day, most notably the fur effects. Though, in my own personal taste, I prefer the more cartoony and colorful look of the original. But it can't be denied this is a good looking game regardless of taste. The plot is all remaining the same, but a few small additional things sprinkled throughout the game are present, like Conker wearing outfits, which harkens back to the original 12 Tales vision a bit. The music also was overhauled with instrumentation going from synthetic to full-on real recordings, and it does sound nice. Unfortunately, they also added more censorship. To me, it really doesn't affect the game with the exception of nerfing the Mighty Poo song. I mean, it was perfect, but it's still good though. In addition, they also refined combat to give us this 3-hit combo system that's more in line with a third-person shooter than Conker in my humble opinion. But third-person shooter, you say? That's the biggest draw to this game, the addition of a fully fleshed out multiplayer game mode utilizing Xbox Live. To summarize, it's a team-based third-person shooter game. There are several game modes and classes. If you want a super in-depth look at the gameplay and how to still play it online today, go check out my video on how to set it up and what the experience is like. It's very cool it's able to be played even now. But to get back to it, Conker Live and Reloaded sold below expectations, much like the original Bad Fur Day. But while Bad Fur Day didn't sell as well due to Nintendo not really marketing it properly because of its adult nature, the Xbox remake didn't sell as well because it didn't have a big audience to begin with. While there was a cult following, Conker just never got the same steam as other Rare titles. And to top it off, the original developed somewhat of a cult following, and the remake just couldn't live up to that original vision in fans' eyes, at least from what I can see. Personally, the addition of the new combat mechanics and just unnecessarily throwing a billion enemies in here do make it the less enjoyable experience between the two. Plus, fans did love the original's multiplayer, which had several different wacky minigame modes, while the remake only had third-person shooter game modes. But that didn't stop them from getting the green light to work on a new project. But this time, rather than focusing on a proper story-driven sequel, Chris Seaver had stated in Rare Replay that he was very interested in continuing the online multiplayer aspect, refining and improving upon it. Enter Conker Gettin' Medieval. This would have been a similar gameplay style to Live and Reloaded, but with a medieval twist. So now you'd have more primitive weapons. We have a bunch of concept art, but this project didn't get too far. Greg the Grim Reaper would have been the main character and focus, with Conker just making an appearance. The game was ultimately cancelled, and we wouldn't hear anything from Conker after that. Until 2015, with the release of Project Spark, a game creation game for the Xbox One. Conker was back with Conker's Big Reunion. The game itself was made with this game creation engine and comes with Conker assets so you can make your own Conker adventure. The initial plan was to make it episodic and release episodes as DLCs over time. But when Project Spark became free, the Conker episodes stopped. we only got one. But in that one episode, we at least got to see some familiar faces like Birdy. The plot summary is, it's been 10 long years since Conker the Squirrel was crowned king of the land. Coincidentally, Live and Reloaded released in 2005, and this game released in 2015, so 10 actual years since the last game. To celebrate, Conker's hosting a big reunion at his favorite spot, the Cock and Plucker. Of course, Conker's already been celebrating, so he's gonna need your help getting to the party. Essentially, on the way to the party, Birdy informs Conker he has to pay the tab before entry, and he needs to get the cash that's been taken by Teddies. We defeat the Teddies, and we get back to save Birdy and the Cock and Plucker from being destroyed, only to realize Conker's friends had the reunion somewhere else and didn't bother to tell him. The Cock and Plucker is closed, Conker's friends hate him, and Conker can't remember what he did to make them hate him in the first place. And unfortunately, although that's all we got for Big Reunion, that's not where Conker's story even ends. He has one more entry. Young Conker. It was released exclusively for the Microsoft HoloLens, which was an AR device that would essentially project images onto your environment, so your levels would change depending on the room you were in. Conker's design in this is atrocious, to say the least, and the concept of this game was very negatively received by Conker fans. The actual gameplay appears to be a platformer collectathon style, and it does have a plot, and like Big Reunion, was released in episodes, only the episodes did in fact release and this game was fully playable. The plot? Professor Von Krippelspeck has created a doomsday weapon, and a younger than we're used to Conker, acting as an agent for the Squirrel High Command, had to find it and destroy it before it's used. That's about as much information as I can give you about that game, as I do not have a HoloLens, and let's be real, who did? The only redeeming quality of this game was Conker was still voiced by Chris Seaver, so that's cool, I guess. But that's where we're at. That was the full journey of Conker from beginning to end. From good, to bad, to young. Conker is a strange case in my opinion. Never praised like Banjo, not as many games either, but yet has a huge fan base. And that includes myself. The world of Conker is just so wacky and ridiculous and over the top. I hope one day we can see him in a proper sequel to Bad Fur Day. Cartoony, over-the-top raunchiness and all. I couldn't get through this Conker video knowing that new merch just dropped with FiGGYZ. I didn't have it planned, but the timing was perfect. FiGGYZ are pixel art styled magnetic figures. They come with their own cool little backplate that looks good on a shelf. Or you can even use them to, I don't know, hang up some art you got from your niece maybe? I am absolutely loving my Conker FiGGYZ, but they don't just come in Conker. Find the link in the description below to order yours and use my code for a discount in orders over $50. Well, that's all I have for you. I really hope you liked this video, and if you did, be sure to tell that to YouTube by hitting that like button. I have lots of other content related to Conker and Rare, so please go check it out, and consider subscribing if you haven't. My community is full of a lot of wonderful people, and I even have a Discord where we chat about games, music, anime, and of course, Rare. Shout out to all the members who support my channel, and if you want to become one and get some exclusive perks and videos, check it out in the description below. Until next time, have a good one.